Michael Graff, welcome to everybody in Charlotte.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. You got it. Just us, man. Just us.
All right.
All right. Well, let's start. So, I'll start with like a little bit of research that I did on you just to give kind of some context. And did I see that you grew up in Maryland?
I did. Southern Maryland. Yeah,
Southern Maryland.
30 minutes outside of D.C., in a very rural part of Maryland. And if you just take the Potomac River south from D.C. and follow it all the way down, I grew up about a mile from the Potomac River.
And I don't know the geography, does the Potomac feed into the Chesapeake?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah,
And so are you close to that?
Yeah, my dad ran a charter boat,
Really?
charter fishing boat on the Chesapeake. He was a terrific fisherman, and he turned it into his job later in life. And that was my first job. I was 14, 15 years old. I was his first mate.
No way.
And
Yes.
And then my brother, who's younger, came along, and he was actually better at the job than I was. And I was in high school and wanted to have friends and go out on Friday nights, and you couldn't do that if you were waking up on Saturday mornings at 3 a.m. to go down to the boat.
Yeah.
So I took a job at a movie theater instead my senior year. But yeah, that's where I learned to work. It was nothing to wake up at 3 a.m.
That'll teach you some ethic,
Yeah.
huh?
Yeah. There were days I would eat leftover hamburgers at 5 a.m, and like I can't even imagine doing that now. But you're 17 and you're like, I don't really want cereal. I'm just going to eat this leftover cheeseburger.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Yeah, that'll get me to lunch.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So in the part of the Potomac, so close to the Chesapeake, is that tidal?
Yeah. No. It's so the Potomac, we lived on the Potomac side, but his boat was run out of the Patuxent River, which runs into the Chesapeake as well.
Got it.
And so he ran his boat out of a little place called Solomon's Island, Maryland, which was a fishing village when he was there. And now it's more of a tourism place, and there's always that tension between the fishermen and the tourists. And but yeah, we went back there. We had his my dad passed in 2019. And we went back there that summer to have a hometown memorial service for him, and just loaded up on crab cakes and walked around. And there's a boardwalk there now. And it's funny, I'm always interested in how places change. Obviously, I live in Charlotte, so that's a common theme here.
Mm-hmm.
And Solomon's was definitely... It catered. My wife came with me, and she loved it. I missed some of the dirty hands, and I missed some of the old fishermen. But yeah, it was a great way to grow up, and it was a great, it laid the foundation for a lot of what I do. My dad, fishermen tell stories, and that's what I wound up doing. I grew up reading the Sunday edition of the Washington Post on Sunday mornings on the dock with my dad, and would trace the TV guide and stuff like that back then. And I would read all the box scores from the Orioles. And, a charter fisherman doesn't make too much money on the Chesapeake Bay, so we didn't have a lot. And my favorite thing to do was go to Orioles games. I loved the Baltimore Orioles. Mm-hmm. And we could only go a few times a year. But then I found out that there were these people called sportswriters, and they got to go to the games for free. And so
every one of them.
So that started me off on a journalism path, honestly.
No way that the Orioles did that.
Yeah, I wanted to go to baseball games for free. And
that's insane. So growing up in Charlotte, we had the Braves and the Orioles. Those were the two closest professional teams.
Right.
And so everybody kind of split. Some people went Braves, we went Orioles.
Did you?
Yes, I grew up an Orioles fan.
Fantastic.
How about that?
Yeah, there are a lot of kids in Charlotte. I know, a friend of mine, Brooks Lukewire, who runs Lukewire, the agency. Right up the street. Yeah. He's named after Brooks Robinson. His dad was a big Orioles fan. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is so cool. All right. Well, that's a nice leading part of the. All right. So then you come here, like High Point, right?
Yeah.
Is that right?
I came down to High Point. I came down for a presidential scholarship weekend. They had High Point in 1997 when I left was not the school it is today. A lot of folks know High Point as sort of a a very high-end campus now with a lot of amenities, I'd say. And it wasn't that then. It was a small liberal arts college in the South at the time.
Yeah.
And they were doing a pretty big marketing campaign, I think, for Northern students at the time. They wanted to go the way of a lot of private colleges in the South, which is bring some of the money from the North down. They didn't luck out with me because we didn't have a lot of money. But I came down for a presidential scholarship weekend, and they wound up giving me a scholarship. And I was driving past all these campuses that I was watching, that I would watch as a big Maryland fan growing up. I would remember Duke playing Maryland and UNC playing Maryland and Wake Forest playing Maryland, and you driving on the highway on I-40 and 85, and I saw all of these places that I knew from television, and I was like, North Carolina seems pretty neat, and it seems like it fits my style. And so I did 4 years here. My first job was as a sports writer in Virginia, but I got back to North Carolina as soon as I could, is like how I like to put it, and was a sports writer at the Rocky Mount Telegram over in eastern North Carolina off of 95.
You lived in Rocky Mount?
I actually lived in Raleigh at the time.
Okay, got it.
And commuted because part of my job was to cover ACC sports. And so I got to, cover UNC and Duke and games like that.
Dude,
and just
the dream.
Yeah, enjoyed it as a 22-year-old, 23-year-old. And then I went, or 25-year-old, I guess, at the time. And then I got a job at the Fayetteville Observer as a sports writer. Mm-hmm. And my job there was actually to cover small colleges, which was really fun because I got to see how teams like Fayetteville State, which is an HBCU in the CIAA, and I got to come cover the CIAA tournament, and I saw what that was about and what that meant to the alums of all of these HBCUs. And I still got to cover a few Duke and Carolina games and things like that. But at the time I was almost 30, 28, 29, 30. And I was like, as great as Carolina Duke is, as those experiences are, a lot of those games start at 9:00 on Saturday nights.
That's right.
And I didn't have a social life, that was my social life. And so I really still love telling stories. So I took a job on the news side there so that I could have a little more regular schedule, and I could actually go out with friends on Friday and Saturday nights because I didn't have much of that for most of my 20s. And that ended up leading me down a feature writing path. And I wound up at Our State Magazine in Greensboro. Mm-hmm. And I think I wrote 50 or so features for them over the course of 4 years, and traveled to all 100 North Carolina counties in that time. Wow. Did a lot of stuff on fishermen in the water, honestly, because
that's what you knew.
That's what I know.
That's cool.
Would wake up and go crabbing with people for Our State and chase the wild horses with the herd managers in Corolla.
Man.
And got to know the state from tip to tip. And ever since then, I've basically said I'm a North Carolinian. I still root for the Orioles, but even my parents moved down here, 12 years ago or so. So
it's a great state.
Yeah, it's a wonderful place to be. So I wound up marrying a woman from Charlotte, and we have 2 kids. So I'm not going anywhere.
No,
I'm a Charlottean now. So.
Man, that's a really cool path and journey to where you are now. That's fascinating. I mean, I'm a multi-generational North Carolina guy. I mean, my mother is Steel Creek, and they were kind of, when you go back her generations, it was kind of swapping in and out of South and North Carolina because it's just right on the border there, York County, and anyway, so I have a lot of roots here, and have watched Charlotte grow to the extent that it has, and it's been fun to watch Charlotte, but it's also fun to watch the whole state. And there's part of you that feels it's getting, like you said, like your hometown, now it's become something that it wasn't. Right. And there's a little bittersweet there, but I'm not one of those just angry old guys. It's like, we're got to be the way it used to be. I like to see the growth because it just brings more things that I'm interested in. So more ideas, more opportunity.
And the old saying, if you're not growing, you're dying is
it's a
true.
good direction to be going.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see here. So, God, man, we could go sports.
Yeah.
I'm gonna veer from that because, I grew up playing basketball. I actually played JV at Chapel Hill. Big Tar Heel, big Tar Heel. So you're a Terp. I'm a Tar Heel. Lynn bias and just all of that history is we could go down that path, but let's stick more into where you are now and what got you here. Without not answering a question for you, but I mean, I did see Charlotte Agenda, Axios, and now you've started the Charlotte Optimist. I'd love to know a little, before we go into that piece, I'd love to know more about what fills your cup in the writing space. What led you to be so passionate in this space?
Yeah. At first, it started obviously with just trying to go to sporting events for free. But as I grew up and as I, got to my mid-30s and now I'm 45, writing and reporting, I'm naturally an introvert. Writing and reporting became a way for me not only to force me out to go talk to people, to learn things, and it's my favorite activity in the world is just learning something new about how somebody approaches a problem, how somebody builds a business, how somebody tries to tackle an issue facing the city. Learning, that is what fills my cup is the learning. And ultimately what that comes down to, a lot of writing is selfish. And
what do you mean by that?
When I write, a lot of times I'm trying to figure out the world for myself. And I do that through conversations with people, people who bring different perspectives than what I have. If I had stayed, I love where I'm from. If I had just stayed a person who only knew the ins and outs of the Chesapeake Bay and the Patuxent and the Potomac rivers, that would have been a full life. But I like expanding my brain every day, and writing does that for me. And it helps me find meaning in the world, and it grounds me when something happens, either in Charlotte or in the world, and I say, how could this be happening? And it helps me to put down words, even if they never see a publication at all. It just helps me to process what's happening in the world and try to level set with it, because it's very easy to get emotional over news. And I have always tried to stray away from using the word news, even though sometimes I break a little news in the newsletter. It's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help people understand. I'm trying to gain an understanding of what's happening. And I think in some ways writing makes me, it certainly makes me a better husband. It makes me a better father, all of those things, because it makes you stop and say, okay, what does this actually mean? Why am I writing about this? Why would this connect to somebody else on any level? And I always try to find a universal truth in all my stories. Try to find that underlying theme that is universal. Whether it is, if it's a story about a person, I wrote a story about the mayor. She's running again for re-election, and she really doesn't need to, And I kept wondering, why would a person who doesn't need to financially, doesn't need to, she's now in her 70s. Why is she continuing to do this for all the headaches that being a mayor brings? And ultimately you find out, I talked to her for 90 minutes, and it's kind of, she really loves Charlotte, but this is working for the city is the only life she knows. And so I think about, the quarterbacks who play, an extra 2 years in professional football because they've grown up with football. And so I try to find those we all want to hold on to the thing that we've done for a long time.
Our identity.
And so I tried to find that universal truth, and I hopefully, some folks connected, or universal theme, and hopefully folks connected with that on a more human level than their differences of opinion on her policies or something like that, or her leadership skills,
Interesting. Would you say, based on what you just told me and kind of how you framed it, that you write not for yourself, but through yourself now, as opposed to maybe when you first start, it's kind of what you think people need to hear or want to hear.
Yeah.
Whereas now it seems a little bit more cathartic for you, or educational.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have to be interested in it, or else nobody's going to be interested in it. If I'm bored with it, why would anybody else read it?
Yeah, it would shine through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are some stories that I go into that I'm not sure if it's going to be the thing that I'm writing about. And then the next thing you know, I'm fascinated by what's happening. And there some stories I do, I have no idea what the person's talking about. I did a story on a biologist at UNC Charlotte. It might be the smartest person I've ever met. Seriously,
another language.
Yeah, I seriously understood 50% of what he was saying. But I loved his enthusiasm for it. And I love, he's in this fascinating little club where he is smarter than the rest of us on how the human body works and how diseases are transferred from one being to another. And he knows more than most people. So he's got his little club of people that he can bounce ideas off of. And I love little clubs of people. I think that's fascinating. I used to, my dad was a skydiver. He jumped 1,000 times.
Fisherman and a skydiver. Huh?
Yeah. And he was a sport parachutist. He could jump from 12,000 feet and land on a plate this size.
That is insane.
Yeah. And so I decided, when he first had his strokes, that I was going to go out and skydive too. Just to kind of carry on that memory. My brother and I did it. And then I got really interested in the skydiving community. And they're this little club. And that's where I was going with that. It was just like, when you go there, they know everything about skydiving, this world that most of us have no idea. They know exactly what to do, how to pack the pack. They know exactly. And they know what to do in an emergency and things like that. And it's just so fascinating to think that there's, I don't know, 200, 300 people in Charlotte that are in this club and they know it. And
just pockets of experts.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And so if I can just infiltrate those worlds from time to time and be a fly on the wall and watch folks do their work, even what you're doing here is its own little club, podcasting. Like, a lot of people want to be involved in it, but you have the knowledge that most people don't, and it's built up through experience and probably mistakes and lessons learned along the way.
Endless.
And all of us have to make those mistakes to be experts in something.
Yeah.
And I love hearing people's stories about that. Like, how did you first get into this? How did you screw this up? Why are you still interested in it? And then just hearing them unload their worlds of knowledge on me, and trying to see where I can relay that to other people in a way that makes sense.
Wow, Michael, well said, man. Very well said. You're a writer. You say things well.
Try to be. Sometimes, and honestly, writing is probably my least favorite part of the job sometimes.
Sure.
Talking to people like this is my favorite part. Yeah, early in the week, I usually load up my week with meetings early in the week because on Fridays I have to write. And I just love that part. Yeah. I love meeting with people, hearing them. And sometimes I'm as you probably know, sometimes I'm a therapist for people who are going through something.
Sure.
They just want somebody to talk to. And that's usually how I offer up my interviews sometimes. I'm not a news reporter. I'm not here to say, I'm trying to get some information from you, trying to dig up something on you. I'm here to say, look, if you need somebody to talk to who might listen to you and might be able to relay your story in a way that other people will read, I'm here and I'm willing to listen. And
conduit.
That leads to a lot of great interviews.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the difference between somebody who does it heart-led and mission-based as opposed to somebody who's whatever else, right? I mean, just much more, like we were talking about before we started, just much more authentic.
Exactly.
Much less intentional and agenda-based.
Yeah.
Well, it shines through for sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Man, that's good stuff. So this morning I wake up and there's an Axios article that really stood out for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it really was digging into just kind of the collective anxiousness around our country and maybe the world. And I know that's a topic that is pretty relevant at this point for whatever reasons. But the ones that they outlined were very interesting. And obviously there's a political side of things. And then there's an AI-based fear, what's to come and all that, pretty common. But the one that stood out for me was the example of, here's 5 people. All 5 have a different perspective, a different reality, based on where they get their information from. And I found that to be so fascinating and something I've probably had conversations around, because it's not uncommon knowledge that we all are on our phones all the time, and just the efficiency of information transfer is just insane at this point. So it makes sense that everybody's getting it from different places. But that also leads me to what you do and what you just started, which is the Charlotte Optimist, which is a weekly newsletter that comes out on Sunday nights that, first I'd love to hear why you choose the topics you do, and then maybe how it relates to kind of what I just said and people kind of gathering information in different places.
Yeah, we're in a new era of media for sure. Everybody recognizes that. The days of, I was a newspaper reporter in 2000, 2001, and the idea of the objective reporter, we are now learning was, obviously a little bit flawed. Like, we're all humans. The reporter can try to be as objective as he or she wants to be. It's still coming through a filter. And sometimes that filter is just experience in life. A 22-year-old reporter like I was has a different perspective on what he hears than a 45-year-old reporter, whether it is a news story or not. And so I can put things now into the context of history and say, like, this moment isn't much different from the 1890s now, because I've learned about all this stuff. So, right now we are, and this is why one of the reasons I started the Charlotte Optimist is, I put a lot of first person in there. It's not that comfortable for me to do that, but I want people to know that this is my lens on something. I want it to be very clear that this is my viewpoint on it, and I am trying very hard to be fair. I hope that shines through. I'm trying very hard to be fair in every single story, but at the same time, it's still coming from me. And I am a flawed narrator. Sometimes I'm more stressed when I write stories than others, and sometimes I'm more relaxed than I should be, or something like that, And we're all flawed narrators, and we're mostly, a lot of times we're the most flawed when we tell our own stories about ourselves. But yes, I want the Optimist to feel very personal, while also recognizing that I'm trying to be fair, not objective. And I hope that connects with people in the modern media world, where there's a lot of naked attempts to get engagement through riling people up.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've never wanted to rile people up. I want people to have a better understanding of something. And, I could be far wealthier if I just decided to choose a political party and go down that path and say, like, I see everything through the liberal lens or the conservative lens.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'm more like most people in the world. We just don't hear from them as much.
Yeah.
and that I see things from multiple perspectives, and I don't see the world through a liberal lens or a conservative lens or a Republican lens or a Democrat lens. I just don't. That's not how I try to peel the onion as far as I can. And I see people as humans before I see their political party. And so in this modern media moment, I hope that the optimist comes along and is either a voice of reason, or maybe some weeks it's the adult in the room, when a lot of people are talking about a topic, and I'm saying, all right, guys, everybody just chill out. Like, this is not as big a deal, or this is how we need to focus on this trouble spot or something like that. And I do try to see things generally, because, this is a part of growth as well, and having troubles in life is, I've realized that for me, the great equalizer is gratitude. Like, if I actively pursue being grateful every day, it level sets everything for me. And I say, like, oh, okay, I was hyperventilating over this frustration, or I was really mad that the Panthers didn't score, or something like that. And then I say, you know what, it's good that I got to sit here and watch the Panthers, and I try to be active in that. And I taught that, when I managed a whole team of people at Axios, I would teach that every day. Yeah. I would just say, okay, well, I hear all your troubles, but what's good today?
Yeah,
what
look
are you
what
happy?
we have.
Yeah. And I hope that the optimist feels that way. I do see things through a glass half full perspective. And I'm not going to apologize for that anymore. It's kind of what I decided with the optimist. I am going to try to find the good in people, because I do think most people have good in them. And that is the everlasting pursuit of the optimist now, is just trying to find the good in the city. And this is a great place. There's a reason that so many people are moving here. Does it have flaws? Yeah. I mean, there's a million people who live here. Of course it's got flaws, and of course it's got bad actors. But if something's really wrong, I hope it sometimes comes, my team at Axios sometimes would say, Michael, you never, like, some managers yell, or some managers get really mad. You've never done that. But we all know when you've got that disappointed dad face. And I kind of feel like
way more effective.
Yeah. I hope that when Charlotte goes awry, sometimes that's what the optimist might feel like. It's like, oh, this dad's disappointed.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes, man. Oh, that's just beautiful. It's just beautiful. And what the right, or how do I say it? The timing of this is just, I mean, talk about division everywhere. And I mean, we all know we're divided, but man, you see a lot of folks who, I'll give an example. Of course, I'll scroll through Facebook, which is just my demise every single time. And I saw someone, making an attempt to pinpoint or recognize hateful rhetoric. And I was like, and it was like this request. It was like, let's call out hateful rhetoric. And I was like, yes, and let's call out hateful rhetoric within ourselves, not someone else.
You're right.
Because that's the problem.
Right.
That's where the division is that we're not able to look inward. We're not able to be empathetic, right? I mean, to understand that we are the way we are for a reason, that you're the way you are for a reason, the big why.
Right.
And it really relates to what I think you just said is you go into things almost not through a lens. I mean, yes, a lens, but not a shade that that falls under a certain category, because we are all who we are for reasons, and there should be no guilt and finger wagging and shame because you're who you are.
Right.
Right? Yeah. It just doesn't make sense. So it's just such a breath of fresh air to hear that the optimist is coming at your delivery of information and stories and storytelling through that lens, and it's just a beautiful thing, and it's what we all need.
I mean, there are days when I think, how could things get worse? And then like I go to Whole Foods and I'm like, what in the world is this like grocery store where I can get all this fresh food like at my fingertips? Or I go to Harris Teeter and I'm like, this is amazing, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, we are living in a wild time. I do think calling out rhetoric is one thing. I think it's the way we call out rhetoric too. Yelling at somebody on Facebook is not going to do anything. Can you have coffee with that person and call it out? That might work better. I do try to have all of my interviews in person. If not, it's on the phone. I don't ask for statements. You won't see very many statements in my newsletter because I feel like those are contrived through comms and PR teams. And I have a lot of former journalists who work on those and work very hard on those, and I respect them in their work. But I'm not after a statement. I want humanity. And I think sometimes statements can be twisted and turned and things like that. And a full body portrait of somebody can't. You can say like, I like that part of that person. I don't like that part of that person. You know, I see myself in that flaw. I might have that flaw, you know, and I do think, you know, and look, let's be real. There are some folks who are fighting for things because they have a harder existence than I have now. So I also know that, you know, I do come at it from, and this word has been sort of, has been tried. Folks try to bury it and say, you know, it'll say, but there is some privilege here. I have a good family. I have a good life. I'm very lucky.
Denying it is not the root.
And so, you know, if you're not in that situation, I can see why arguing your point to try to get a better status in life, you know, I can see why you would do that, and I could see why you would fight harder. And there are folks who need to fight to get by in this world, and who probably are going to listen to this and say like, oh, Michael's doing this whole like everybody come together thing, but like the reality is we're being stepped on, and like I get that, you know, and that crosses racial lines, it crosses rural urban lines. We have folks who are struggling in the city. We have folks who are struggling in Gaston County. We have folks who are struggling in Yadkin County. We have folks who are struggling all over the place. But I do think that if you try to find, like, look, we all love to eat. We all love, you know, a good sip of water after a workout. We all, you know, or after we've been walking, you know, and if you try to find those things, you know, I do think we're living in a pretty marvelous time still. Like even 100 years ago, like no air conditioning. 120 years ago, no air conditioning. Things like that, you know.
Yeah.
And now it's all basically standardized across Charlotte. So you know, it's remembering again a little bit of gratitude and saying like, at least I don't have to walk 20 miles to visit my neighbor or ride a horse to do that.
And have your life threatened on that walk. Yeah. Right. Totally. I mean, good Lord. It's interesting when I think I'll go down rabbit holes and get in holes. And of course, it's a lot through my phone, but it's also, you know, you walk around and you see things and it can send you into a negative place. And nature is always what, you know, reminds me is that this world in this country specifically is not one big city. Right. In fact, it's very much not a big city. It is mostly rural nature.
Yeah, it is.
And it's just vast, right? And it just takes you away from all those little nitpicky things that you get when you're surrounded by energy and personalities and people and opinions and judgments and all that stuff. Just go out there and it just lessens a little. Yeah,
I mean, sunrise over the water is my thing. Probably not a surprise because my dad would drive his boat into Sunrise. But yeah, that's always that for me where I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just a little speck. Yeah. Not even just in the world, but in time, like, you know, in the course of history. And humanity has a way of being resilient. And I think it's, you know, I think we're all, we'll get through this.
Oh, yeah. We will. Yeah. Well, Michael, I think that might be it.
Thanks for having me.
I think we covered it.
Yeah.
I think we could cover a million more things, but I think that was That was perfect.
Good.
Thank you
good.
for sharing.
No, wonderful to be here. A very relaxing environment.
Yeah.
I'm really happy for what you built. Getting people in a place where they can use their voice and ask their questions and reach some place of meaning, and then share that with people is really, I mentioned that I'm uncomfortable with sharing the first person stuff a lot of times, but I do it in hopes that somebody will see it and say, like, I've experienced that too, or something like that. And that's what this setting does for folks. It gives them an opportunity to share their story in hopes that one person or 10 people or 20 people can say, I can relate to that. And when you can relate to something, there's always it's a chance for you to be a better person too. So.
One last thing, when you were listing off the things that we enjoy as people, food, talking, the one that stands out for me is laughter.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just the best.
Gosh, yeah. That is one good thing that social media has brought, honestly, is like I can just scroll through Instagram and my feed is just full of comedians.
Mine too. Like scaring people. And the simplest stuff just makes me cackle.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, laughing is a huge, huge thing.
Yeah.
And, we're seeing some more comedy things open up in Charlotte because of it. And I think that's great. Yeah, that's a good one. Sports and music also bring people together.
Absolutely.
They also bring people apart.
Right, but hopefully in a playful way.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, Michael, thank you for coming in.
Thanks, Robbie.
Is there anything that the Optimist has in development, or is it what it is?
The funny thing about starting something, as you know, is that options come along and things come along that you didn't expect, and the things that you thought you could count on, you can't count on them.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of I'm 5 months into the Optimist. I launched it on May 4th, and not even a half a year done. And I really wanted to focus the first 6 months on just telling good stories and trying to set the brand. And we're almost at that 6 month mark, and I need to figure out, I want to figure out where the future goes from here, whether it is more staff members, whether it is jumping into different types of media, things like that. And we're playing around with a couple of things now. My creative partner, Logan Cyrus, who's the photographer on all my stories, and I...
Who wrote last night's...
Yeah. He's doing some things, and we're trying to figure out, where do we spend? Because I do think, I have 2 little kids, and I don't want to miss any of their lives and their sports and things like that. So I am very conscious of how do I spend my time, and I want to make sure that the things that I'm doing next are things that bring me joy, and because it's, I work 7 days a week, and I try not to let it show with my kids, and I try to be there for them. And but I do think I would like to bring people together. I think bringing people together in this time, you mentioned the Axios story. There was this morning, I mean, I read it too. There's loneliness is a big thing. And it makes sense in a city where 157 people are moving to the region a day, that people would be lonely. And they're looking for connective points. They're looking for ways to plug in or to meet friends or to get the next job or things like that. And my friend Ted Williams, former who used to run Charlotte Agenda and now has Tiny Money, has the jobs thing narrowed down. I think he's done a very good job of helping people find jobs. That's his great joy in life. I'm thinking I'd like to bring people together around conversations on important topics, or I might just want to throw a low country boil or cook out or something like that, and have no programming whatsoever other than just having people get together. And
I love it.
Because magic comes from from lack of programming sometimes too.
Yeah.
So
fantastic. Well,
yeah.
count me in.
Yeah, I'll see you there.
Yeah. Michael Graff, thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Robbie. Thanks
I
for what you're
appreciate it.
doing. I'm grateful.